Hello, hi, welcome to this video, continuing on my journey with the Walter Scott Prize for Historical Fiction. This is my fifth book, I believe, from the Longlist out of 12. If my pace keeps on like this, I'm probably not going to read all 12 by the time the shortlist is announced on the 15th of April, especially as I'm away the week before that. So I'll probably read while I'm away, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to do any videos for the one or two books I read in that particular week. But I'll give it a go. I'll probably, before I go away, I'm aiming to get at least 8 of the books read, hopefully 9 maybe, but we'll see. Anyway, this video is all about The Mare by Angharad Hampshire. So what did I think? So The Mare is loosely based on a true story about a concentration camp guard. So the pronunciation of the name, I may get it wrong, so I apologise if I do. In the book, it's spelt phonetically as Hermine, or Hermine. But a few videos, because I like to do a bit of research after I read the book, have pronounced it as Hermina. Hermina? Hermina. So I just thought that was easier to say it as I was reading along, so I call her Hermina. Anyway, so it's based loosely on the story of Hermine braunsteiner. I don't know if I said that right either, who was a concentration camp guard. Can't get my words out this morning. It's Saturday. So yeah, we look at her story. So we follow her from a teenager, so before the war started, and then we follow her when the war started, applying for the job initially because it paid really well. And then we see her getting caught up in what happened in these camps. We see her change from being, a bit apprehensive, seeing what was happening to these prisoners as being disgusting, to then falling in line with the propaganda, believing the propaganda. Everyone around her is believing the propaganda, and she starts to believe it herself. She believes that she's got no choice. These prisoners are criminals, and she needs to deal with them effectively. And that means violence in a lot of cases. But she feels that she's doing her duty, and she's believing this propaganda. At the same time, we follow the story of Russell, who is, or turns out to be her husband in the end. And the story is quite nice because it flicks between the two first-person narratives, which makes you feel a bit closer to the story, where if it was in a third-person narrative, it might be just feel like quite historical, quite factual, quite, I don't know, maybe a bit boring. But because it's the first-person narrative, we feel like we're in the story with them. Like it's really quite strange how I almost empathised with Hermine along the way, slightly, in bits anyway. So yeah, we go between Russell and Hermine, and we also jump between times as well, which is nice for the pace of the book. We start off, as I say, when Hermine is a teenager, and we start off with Russell where he first meets Hermine a few years later, well, in the 50s, late 50s, I believe. And she doesn't obviously let on about her story. They fall in love. They try and get her into America. I think they go to Canada, and then she gets a visa, and then they move to America. And their worlds fall apart when a few years later, in the early 60s, I believe, a reporter from the Times is given information that Hermine was a concentration camp guard. Oh my God, what is wrong with my words? A concentration camp guard. And Russell is just completely blown away. He doesn't believe it's true. And, slowly but surely we unpick the story, or he unpicks the story, and he's in disbelief. He doesn't want to believe it, but he stands by Hermine, and we see the struggles they go through. And he almost becomes a victim of the propaganda himself, because he stands by her throughout. And we see her when she's extradited, she goes on trial, she's convicted of murder, and he stands by her throughout, and he moves to Germany when she goes to prison. And yeah, it's wonderful how the author kind of makes you empathise almost with Hermine when she's, extradited. She said, she didn't have a choice. She had to do what she was told, otherwise, she would be the one in the firing line. And you kind of almost feel sorry for her, and then you're drawn back with the facts of what happened when you go back, because the story then flicks back to her time as a guard, and we see the things that she did, and there's some horrible stuff in there. But yeah, the way the book plays with your emotions is brilliant. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. So not to sound as a criticism at all, and nothing negative, but it really reads like this was written by someone who's like a professor of English literature or a professor of English. You know, the language is so beautiful, but simple as well. And the only thing I would say, so with a lot of the literary devices employed here, they're kind of expected, not in a bad way. It's just what you get is what you expect. Whereas if I compare it to last year's Walter Scott Prize winner, Hungry Ghosts, you know, the metaphors and similes were just so unique, and you know, it's stuff I'd never heard before, and the story itself was unique. I mean, obviously with the Mare, the story has to kind of follow loosely the facts of what happened. Obviously, it's a completely fictionalized account, but it is based on a real person and real events that happened. So there's only so far you can go with taking that story elsewhere. So it's not a criticism at all. It's just that's how it read to me, but it's not a bad thing. It just reads really well. There's some great use of imagery. It's quite nice how they contrast each other. When we've got the happier moments in the book, we have colour, we have, you know, birds. There's a lot of talk of birds. Hermine is quite into bird watching, if you like. And flowers as well. That's used quite a lot to symbolise life. The birds symbolising freedom, I guess, for me. And then you contrast that with the time at the camps, and there's a really, I'd say, distressing scene, and we have the imagery of a pig being used, and not only does Hermine call these prisoners pigs, but she makes one, there's this one instance where she makes one get on the floor on all fours, eat from a pig trough, and then roll around in the mud before she assaults her. And it's quite, you know, daunting how these are contrasted with these happier times to these really rough, quite hard, upsetting scenes, if you like. So I did really appreciate the language use in here. It's brilliantly written. It's not overly complicated either. It's not literary. It's, I say, because of the first person narrative, it actually makes it feel more like a story you're engrossed in, and you're along on the ride with the characters. I don't know what's wrong with me this morning. I've never been good at speaking, so apologies. But yeah, it makes you feel like you're along with these characters through the story. And yeah, it's enjoyable, and it's not overcomplicated. It's a really, you know, succinct, sometimes difficult look at what actually happened, and the fact that it really did happen, or not the exact events in the book, but you know what I mean, the time during the wars, the concentration camps, the fact that these things actually happened makes it all a bit more sort of, I can't find the word, but yeah. Anyway, that's my thoughts on the Mare. I really liked it. I'd probably, yeah, it's 5 stars. I mean, I say the only niggling bit, and it's not really a criticism, I'm just being picky, is some of the language and the literary devices were expected. You know, they weren't necessarily surprising, unique or anything, but that's not a bad thing. It doesn't make it a bad thing. It's still really lovely book, really enjoyable, quite heartfelt, quite emotional, and quite distressing in some parts. I would advise discretion. If stuff like what happened in concentration camps can trigger you, then I would give a little warning there. Some of the things that Hermine does to these prisoners is quite distressing, but it's the way we look at it in the story and the way we go back and forth between time periods. You know, it's so strange how you feel empathy for her at certain points, even after what she's done. And then you're drawn straight back to actually, no, that is really bad. How can I ever felt that empathy for her? So it's a really interesting take on what happened back then. And yeah, 5 stars. So that's my thoughts on the Mare. I'll leave a bit more of a detailed review, as I've started doing, down below. Also on Goodreads as well, I've started actually doing a little bit more of a detailed review, because I feel like I can get words out better on paper than I can when I'm actually trying to think on the top of my head. But yeah, I'll leave a bit more of what I think there. In the meantime, I haven't decided what I'm going to read next, but it's probably going to be between The Safekeep and The Book of Days. I'll do one of them. I'll probably read those 2 next. I don't know which order, but they're the 2 I'll do next, because I'm still keeping Glorious Exploits until a bit later, because I've just heard so many good things about it. In the meantime, thanks for watching. If you've read any of the Walter Scott Prize longlisters, tell me what you think down below in the comments. Until next time, bye.